Hi, Alessio. Hope you're well. Just to give you a very quick update here on the Tesla situation. So let's open up the chart of Tesla, and I'm going to give you a brief analysis of what I'm seeing here on the chart of TSLA, and also what this chart is all about. All right, guys, join me. All right, guys, welcome back. So in my previous update, you may recall some weeks ago, I suggested, well, actually, before I go into that, let me first of all start with here. So you may remember as Tesla was reaching these levels, let me just get my pen. So as Tesla was in this region here, after it made this rather sharp peak here. So what happened was at this point, we warned that very likely Tesla was getting ready for a pullback, and I suggested that the most likely area for a pullback, for this drop, for this correction, I suggested the most likely area for this correction was the prior high. In other words, the likely target, the target for this correction, the more likely one, was at this level here, the prior high. Here's a brief clip and we'll come back. Watch this level very carefully. The breakout point. It's about 215 approximately there. So that puts it about here, which is also convenient because of the 50% logarithmic retracement. Meets us about the exact same point, the prior high of February, the February high, which is about 215, 214, 215. That's a level that could get tested because prior highs, which are support, often get tested during a correction, which is actually precisely what happened, as you can see here. So again, that was the prior high. Tesla came down, price came down and tested that level beautifully and then bounced off. Now, I also said that as long as Tesla remains above 192, our key support here, then very likely we're still in an uptrend and a bull market. And as you can see here, it is indeed an uptrend. And I've been saying this now for several months. Indeed, that this, again, a higher low, so let me just show you again. If this was the previous low that we had in early 2023, this is a higher low, this is a higher low, and of course we got the higher highs here as well. So clearly an uptrend in this market, in this stock. And again, I remain bullish as I have been. So as I'm sure you know, from the start of this year and even from December of last year, I've remained bullish on Tesla stock. Now, in my last video, as you may recall, the last video I made on Tesla with Sarah, I said that if Tesla can get above, let me just get this area in focus. I mentioned these two levels on my chart, and that is, as you can see, between 240 to 250. So I said, watch this level between 240 to 250, and I said a break above 240, 250, ideally above 250. So ideally, I wanted to see a break above 250 resistance to give us an idea, to give us a higher probability the bottom was in. So if Tesla can give us a nice impulsive rally or a move or a close above 240, 250, ideally above 250, which would be better, that would give us a high probability that the bottom is in on this correction. Now we got that rally and close above 240, 250, as you can see on this bar or in this region here. So I do think that the bottom is in for Tesla based on that move. And so far the rally of this low here has been impulsive, composed of 5 waves. Okay, so far so good. I do think the bottom has been reached, however, on one condition. So I want to keep this analysis as short and sweet as possible. I think that the bottom is in, provided Tesla stays above this green line, this support at 228. Okay, just about 228 here. You can see that, again, we're still above this purple uptrend line. Notice this uptrend line that we drew some time ago. We're still above this. So again, another indication that we're likely in a bull market and uptrend. Now, here's the bottom line. The important point is this. I think that this drop here was an ABC correction. So A wave, B wave, C wave, comprising our ABC correction. Now, what if I'm wrong that Tesla stock has bottomed? Well, here's how we can know. Let me just point this out, and I think this will make a lot of sense. So the other possibility, and I'm sure some of you are probably thinking this, some of you probably, as I'm saying this, are probably screaming at me through your screen and probably saying, Alessio, what if it's not the kind of ABC pattern you think it is? What if it's a different kind of an ABC pattern? So there is another possibility. And let me just say that what I'm going to show you right now is not something that I think is likely or probable, but it's a risk that we need to consider. As you know, I just mentioned a few minutes ago that this is an important support level on the chart, this green line at 228. If Tesla, now it's an if, but I'm only mentioning this from the point of view of risk. Let me say again that what I'm going to tell you is not something that I think is likely, but it's just a risk. If I'm wrong that Tesla stock has bottomed, which I don't think I'm wrong, but let's just put it this way. If Tesla stock was to drop below this green line, 228, what that would mean is that this would probably be, if we fall below 228, then that would mean this is just an A wave down. I'm sorry about my handwriting. I'm just trying to write with this mouse. A wave down, that would be a B wave bounce, okay, B wave rally, and then the C wave would be located somewhere here, okay, between 208 to 192, okay? In other words, something along this line. A wave, B wave, and C wave into this region. By the way, let me mention again, that's only if we fall below this green line. I do not think this is likely, okay, because I think we've already bottomed out. I'm just saying, if Tesla stock were to drop below this green line at 228, then I would have to assume this is just a B wave rally, and then a C wave would be somewhere located down here, between 208 to about 192. Or actually, you could put it into this region completely, in this entire region, between 217 to 192. Now, let me say again, I don't think that's likely. I'm not expecting that. Let me just get rid of all these lines. Okay, so I only mentioned that from the point of view of risk. My higher probability expectation, as I mentioned, and again, I'm sorry for repeating this point, but I think it's worth just repeating because some people may get confused. My higher probability is, as I mentioned in my previous video, I said that, look, we came to an important level of support. Let me just get this in focus. Okay, so my view is this, quite simple, that Tesla stock tested support. In other words, we dropped down from here to prior high. We've bounced off, as you can see, bounced off from this level, and we've moved now above 240, 250. So Tesla stock, as far as I can see, because it's moved above this region here, 240, 250, yeah, I think the bottom has been reached, provided we stay above our support, which, as I mentioned, is 228. Okay, and I think we're going to stay above this level, and I think very likely the next target is to fill this gap. See this gap over here? I think that's the gap fill. I think we're going to go ahead and essentially fill this gap, about 290 by the looks of it, and probably we might even test and take out the prior high here that we made in July. Okay, so that's what I think is more likely in the coming weeks, likely to fill this gap here, this gap down that you're seeing about 290. That's where I think we're going eventually. Now there could be a pullback. Okay, there's always pullbacks to averages, glitches along the way. But personally, I think as long as Tesla protects and stays above 228 on any pullbacks, as long as we stay above 228, I think the bottom is in, and I'm looking again for a filling of this gap here, this gap down, and probably for taking out the July highs in the next several weeks, despite any pullbacks to averages, for example. Now, some of you probably thinking, well, wait a second, Alessio, there's a gap here, and there's a gap here. Two gap ups, as a matter of fact. Now, it's possible that this gap may get filled. Yeah, I mean, it's possible. If we get a pullback, maybe this gap here may get filled. Okay, maybe in the next several weeks. Probably. But some of you probably thinking, well, what about this gap here? There's a gap about 200 and, yeah, that gap is about 220 to 215. 215, 220. But here's the thing. This is a mistake that a lot of people make when it comes to chart analysis. You see, guys, a lot of people don't realize there is a difference between a gap down and a gap up. Okay? So most of you, I think most of you know the difference. But for those of you who may not be familiar with this, let me mention this very quickly. This is a gap down. Okay? Actually, I'll do this with a different color. I'll do this in red. This is a gap down. Now, it's obvious why we call this the gap down, because price opens lower than the previous closing price. That's why it's a gap down. However, this, you see here, this gap over here is a gap up. Okay? Gap up. Now, why is this important? Because a lot of people don't realize gap ups are not equal to gap downs. They don't have the same probability of getting filled. So in technical analysis, yes, statistically And probabilistically, gap downs like this one have a much higher probability of getting filled. Okay, gap downs usually get filled. However, what people don't appreciate is that gap ups have a lower probability of getting filled. Not impossible, no, just have a lower probability. Okay, so gap ups don't always get filled like this one. Now, let me just show you some examples of this. Some people don't even realize this, but this is Tesla stock from the year 2020. Okay, guess what? Several gap ups did not get filled. For example, let me show you this one. This is obviously a very beautiful gap right over here. Look at that. Okay, let me just get a rectangular box here. Okay, so you'll see this gap here did not get filled, about the 46 region here, 46.40 region. This gap did not get filled, about 85.79 region here. This gap did not get filled either, about the 75 region here. So you can see already several gaps that have not been filled in Tesla since the year 2020. Okay, even the drop that we had, the big drop that we had last year, did not fill these gaps from the year 2020. Now, is it possible at some point in the future they may get filled? Yeah, but I'm not going to hold my breath for that this year. Okay, so the bottom line is, so look, these gap ups don't always get filled. Let me show you one more. There's another gap right before this in the year 2019. A very big one, as a matter of fact. Yeah, there's this one right over here. Take a look at this. So very clearly, you can see this gap from the year 2019. And if I just get my pen, yeah, there it is. Nice big old gap right over here. And this gap from 2019 has yet not been filled. So we need to appreciate this asymmetry. There's an asymmetry between gap downs and gap ups. Okay. Again, the key point is that gap ups, like the ones you see here, have a lower probability of getting filled. Okay. Whereas gap downs, like the ones over here, let me show you, like this one over here. Gap downs have a much higher probability of getting filled. That's why I think this is a gap down right over here. I think this gap is very likely to get filled, if not this week, but in the coming weeks. So I'm watching this gap here with close interest, and I think the next key target is for Tesla to come over here and fill that gap in the coming weeks, quite likely, and probably even take out the prior high of July. Okay, again, provided that Tesla stock stays above 228. Okay, and as I explained earlier, again, just to repeat my point, if Tesla were to drop below 228, which I'm not expecting, I think it's a lower probability. But if it were to drop below 228, that means the bottom is not in, and that means we might get that long, big ABC pattern that I showed you earlier in the video. But personally, I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's a low probability, and I think the correction here is done. Regarding the ABC correction here is done for Tesla, personally. And again, that's as long as we stay above 228 on any pullbacks. All right, guys, that's really what I have here on the chart of Tesla. And by the way, if you want to see more videos in the future, then feel free to subscribe. Thank you very much. Bye for now.